I'm very pleased to have this invitation, an opportunity to come and share about our experiences from the Danish Mission Council. I should say we're just in the process of facilitating a review on right-based approaches in DMCDD, the Danish Mission Council. We have been very inspired by the Swedish Mission Council, so thank you very much for all your input in that process. I can say, let me just say a little bit, just going to say a little bit about the process, but what I really want to focus on is our findings, because I think many of the findings you will find that you can recognize, and you will find them not too far from what you find in your work. But very short, we had in 2012 a new policy in Danida, which was called the Right to a Better Life. And when that was launched, it was like a new paradigm shift came into our work, where human rights previously had been a component that you are supposed to work with in development work. Now it became more like a frame, that everything you do has to fit into this frame, just as has been the case with CEDA, I know. So we initiated a learning review in the Danish Mission Council, trying to find out to what extent are rights being addressed among our member organizations, but also among our partner organizations. Very briefly, we had the assumption that much of what we see when we go and visit the work, when we monitor the projects, much of what we see is actually, we think, very much identical with what we call a right-based approach. So we had the assumption that when we go out and we research the attitudes, the knowledge about human rights, that we wouldn't meet too much, ignorant about rights. Most people will know about the rights. Most Christian partners that we come about are basically quite positive about the rights. They think it's identical, or it can be referred back to the Bible, and that the biblical foundation for human rights are quite is there. There's not much opposition against that. So that was one of our assumptions. We've decided that the process would last for a year or a year and a half. We had this spring a pilot trip to East Africa, and some of the findings I'm going to share are all from East Africa, because that's where we decided we're doing a pilot trip. We want to test out some material, interview guides, and based on that trip, where we also had an external consultant to help us, we worked out some material that actually now in phase 2, where we are in the midst of, is being tested in 7-8 other countries, also Asian countries. And of course, I can reveal now, though we're still in the process, but the experiences that we are getting from Asia are not identical with the experiences we get from East Africa. However, there are some similarities and a general positive attitude towards working with human rights, but the context, whether you are a minority church in a country or whether you are the majority church in a country, is a huge difference. So that's interesting. We will settle that by the end of this year into a learning report, and next year we're trying to disseminate the learning and work out some tools and screening formats. So that's the process. Yeah, and very briefly, when we started, how do we go about a process like this? in the Danish Mission Council, we also meet and have network meetings with other NGOs, of course, as you do. And the interesting thing we found from the start was that whenever you ask, so what is a right-based approach, or what does it mean to work right-based, you couldn't find one definition on that. Even today, the debate is still going on. Everyone agrees that it's good to work right-based, but when you ask, but why and how does that look like, you don't get a simple answer, you get many different answers. And so I think this also made the exercise, and I'm sure in the Swedish Mission Council you must have come across the same thing. It makes a review difficult, because what is your starting point and what do you test? So we made it very open to say we are not going to do a research on RBA only, but we made it more broadly to say we want to investigate in the rights perspective, which we think that terminology is a little more broad than just to say a right-based approach. But even amongst the different definitions of RBA, there are some, still you can say there are some main things that we have in common. The first thing is it recognizes that poverty, injustice and discrimination can only be overcome by fundamental structural changes. Very fundamental for working with root causes and not just working with immediate needs. It also recognizes the UN standards. And finally, it identifies rights holders and duty bearers as part of the analysis. I should also say I'm happy to share my slides with you if some of you are typing too fast. 5 overall principles, RBA principles, we applied. Context, which I said a little bit before, was the first. Empowerment, also we believe, is one of the main principles to be applied. And I'm doing this a little bit fast. Participation is also a principle when you work in a right-based approach. And I actually think that the more you unfold, the right-based approach, the more it becomes, how can you say, it's easier for churches, it's easier for organizations to adapt to it, or not just adapt, but actually it's more transparent. So when you talk about right-based approach, a framework, sometimes that was at least our experiences, you get the opposition, like this is something that the Western now is put on us as a new thing that we need to live up to. But when you take it apart and put it into some elements, like some principles, it's easier to have a discussion on, what is empowerment, what is participation, why is participation something that also aligns with, a biblical approach to meet people, to the dignity of people, and so on. Accountability was our 4th principle that we applied. And accountability here is it's a broad definition, because our accountability relates to duty bearers. It has to do with how rights holders, or how the organizations that we work with, how they are able to keep them account, whether it's schools, teachers, educational ministries, and so on. But accountability also goes on other levels. It goes on, we put it here, downwards, inwards, and upwards. Like upwards is probably what we know the most. Donors, for example, we have to be accountable to donors, to CEDA, send them reports on time. That was actually also something that we came across in our interviews that most of the partner organizations, whenever you have the talk about accountability, they would be very, yes, we are very accountable. We always send reports to the donors on time. But when you talked about, okay, so what about accountability to duty bearers? They were a little bit more resistant to that. But finally also, what about accountability to your board inwardly in your organization? And finally, what about accountability to your target groups? You know, the ones that you give service deliveries or the ones that you support in many ways. How are they? How is accountability actually applied? The final one is non-discrimination, and I'll come back to that. Yes. Okay, I think I'll go to the findings. We applied different tools. This was just one of the tools. We asked the organization to put a cross between needs and rights. And it actually, I'm just showing you that because that was an interesting exercise, very, very simple. We thought, but it turned out that it wasn't very simple because it actually created some good dialogue on, why is needs and rights put up as oppositions. We had some interesting comments on, why is needs necessarily in opposition to rights? Actually, maybe they go hand in hand. So, even though we had the intention to find out, do they work needs-based or right-based, we actually came back with some good input as to maybe we sometimes in the West, maybe we are creating an opposition that actually isn't there, but we create sometimes in our wording something that is not really out there, but it's there in our theories, it's there in our understandings of, again, the lessons learned we have. That's very interesting. Okay, so what were the main knowledge or attitudes that we met in East Africa? The first one is that partner organizations in East Africa are aware of human rights, as I started saying, but they had quite little knowledge about the RBA in practice. So it wasn't like the organizations we met with, it wasn't like they could say, well, we systematically monitor the 5 principles like this, and then it wasn't something that was reflected in the way they worked. But they were very open to, and they said, we work with human rights, we address human rights when we have discussions with the local schools. So it was something that was on their mind. We think it's very much in alignment with the Bible. And so on one level, we saw that they were very open to it. On another level, when it came to the practicalities of how do you integrate that in your organization, it was a new concept. A number of organizations expressed a strong skepticism towards the rights agenda, called it a Western-driven agenda, secular, confrontational, and dominated by minority rights. Also, as you probably know, it should be said that in Uganda, the minority rights, of course, is taking up the whole scene. And it was very evident, although we decided we're not going to ask any questions on gay rights or anything, but it just came up like it's taking up a lot of the scene, and I'll come back to that. Okay, and we also met this comments that, or not comments, but human rights activists, for some reason, is a really bad word among partners. So it seems like when we say, what do you think about human rights? Many would respond, we don't really like it that much because it resembles human rights activists. And somehow to be identified with an activist is not something that is considered very Christian. It's just interesting. It goes against each other, and it's about maybe the whole confronting that's not what the Christians should do. Yes. Yes.
Which were the other two countries? Uganda
and Burundi and Kenya. Yes. And I'm just going to quote some, it will speak for themselves. So in Burundi, a church said this: the Bible itself speaks about human rights. As believers, we believe in one universal Christian culture and trust that the Bible can give us inspiration to protect human beings. Therefore, we do not have any problems in integrating human rights. So quite open attitude. Then we met another, less open but still open. This is from Uganda. There are some contradictions between a rights approach and the scripture. According to the Bible, for example, parents must discipline their children to avoid them choosing a wrong way. The church is consequently, in general, pro-physical discipline. This is now being challenged by a rights approach, saying that teachers and parents cannot cane children, and children can sue their parents if they do so. We have been overwhelmed by the issue of rights. And I think a statement like this you could also find outside the church, because it also relates very much to the culture. So that was just an observation. And then this was from Uganda, from the Lutheran World Federation. The West has undergone decades of liberalization and secularization to arrive at the current rights agenda. If the same agenda is being pushed too fast in Africa, we risk the broader message of equality and respect for human rights is translated into a narrow fight for minority rights, which Uganda and other African countries are not ready for yet. The Western focus on minority rights is overshadowing other rights issues, such as the right to a fair trial and the shrinking space for civil society. And I think perhaps this is one of the greater challenges and one of the greater statements to keep in mind when discussing RBA and the pace for RBA and how do we dialogue about RBA. And then from Kenya, we feel that people are listening more if we use another language without compromising the rights agenda. The human rights agenda is seen as a Western agenda. It is wrong. We need to reclaim it. So it was actually what is it called? It's an organization in Tanzania. They work in East Africa actually, but have headquarters in Nairobi. And they say they are basically very open to the rights, but their point was we need to package it right. We need a right package. So again, we were just talking about this before. It's about how do you word the whole agenda for right-based approach? Is it worded out of is it presented like this is a new donor thing that we are imposing on you, or is it presented as this is something that is actually very in alignment with your approach and the biblical approach? It's something that's good for Africa. It's not something that's good because we says it's good. And so we had a lot of discussions about language also during the trip.
So OASC is Organization for African Institute.
Exactly.
Churches.
Exactly.
Independent original church.
Yes, it's exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Some open questions. Is the context a determining factor for what kind of rights that are possible to work with? And should it be accepted that only certain rights can be addressed, or should churches in Africa be encouraged to regain a full rights agenda? These were some of the questions that we took back. We haven't got one answer to it, but I will leave them up to you.